You're listening to the Fezcast, produced on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and featuring the independent thoughts, rants and rambles of Saracens fans and special guests. If you'd like your opinion to be heard on the show, you can find the Fezcast on Facebook or Fezcast_SSA on Instagram and whatever Twitter is known as these days. But for now, enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Welcome everyone to episode 2 then, which I've lost count straight away, but that's because I've missed one already. Episode 3 of the Fezcast this season. Me and Barry here doing the chat around an interview that Jez has done with a special guest this week, who is Dan Vickers, Saracens kicking coach. But we'll get to that in a bit. But first, Barry, you all right, mate? How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Had a reasonable summer, and yourself?
Yeah, ticking along. It still feels like summer at the moment, but hopefully we can be a little bit more professional than the first time round. We'll have to see. I say a little bit more professional, but raise the bar of amateurism slightly higher than we normally do anyway. But...
Well, let's see if we can avoid tripping over the bar. We said it so low last week.
Absolutely. I mean, first we should probably mention the Saracens women's season is getting underway this weekend, but they had a friendly against Worcester. Plenty of new faces in that team with the internationals preparing for I don't even know how you're supposed to say it now, this new tournament. Is it WXV or is it W15 or whatever we go with? But fantastic new tournament for women's international rugby. But yeah, Saracens friendly side running out fairly convincing victors against Worcester. Obviously we haven't seen any of it, but it's a good result, isn't it, Barry?
Absolutely. I mean, results in pre-season games are not particularly important, but it is obviously, it's just about getting some minutes in the legs and getting back into the shapes of various things and how the team wants to set up to play games in the season. But yeah, I mean, a win's a win, and we'll certainly take that.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll talk about players getting minutes under their belt in some semi-competitive rugby in the end part, I think. But we shall talk about the World Cup. First up, we are a Saracens show, but we do have to talk about the World Cup because it is on after all. The England-Japan game. Let's go straight into that. On paper, it looks like a convincing victory, but it was a pretty frustrating watch, I think. What do you reckon, Barry?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't one I enjoyed. I mean, I suppose, as opposed to the Argentina game, which I was forced to watch from behind the sofa almost, I was so fearful of how it was going to end up, especially after the red card on 3 minutes. The Japan game was at least able to sit there and watch it, but my word, it was it's a tough ask to watch England play at the moment because it's not the most exciting brand of rugby going, is it really?
It's not, no. There are some people, I suppose, that would say, well, in a World Cup, if you win the trophy, it doesn't really matter how you do it. But I think I'm very worried about what happens when we come up against a top 10 standard opposition. Obviously, the Argentina game was a very unusual one. With the sending off and the sort of siege mentality victory there, but yeah, Japan are a decent side. We've got to say that they are a decent rugby team. They're maybe not the Japan of 4 years ago or 8 years ago even, but they're still reasonable. And to win by 20 plus points, as France showed against Uruguay, for example, is actually not always the easiest thing to do in a Rugby World Cup. But yeah, it's not the most exciting brand of rugby, and it has made me laugh seeing some of the comments about how Owen Farrell might come back into the team and how boring that's going to be, which I think we're showing that maybe it isn't actually Owen's fault, is it?
Well, I mean, he's consistently been blamed for the idea of kicking the ball or kicking possession away, particularly in and around the opposition 22, and he's got some long legs if he was able to do that from the stand on Sunday night, because he wasn't playing, and yet that seems to be the tactic. It's clearly something that the players have been told to do, and for all the for all the thoughts about, well, should the players take control and should they just play what's in front of them? If they're told to play that, then you can't really have too much of a go at them for actually doing what they've been told to do by the coaching setup.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's all we can really say about it, isn't it? But do you know what? I'm actually going to go, and I wasn't going to do this, but I'm gonna do something that I don't think we've ever done on this show before, and a lot of people are probably going to fall off their chair. And I'm going to praise Marcus Smith. I actually thought he came on in the game and actually injected something a little bit different. And I think I don't know that he's an international standard 10 still, but I think bringing him on for 15, 20 minutes and a reasonable stroke to bring him on at fullback, I actually think he did add just a little bit of impetus to the end of a game, which could be more crucial in other matches going forward. Whether they use him like that again or not, I don't know. But you probably don't agree with me, really, do you?
It's not so much that. It's an interesting story, him playing at 10. Apparently, and I'm sure this has been mentioned before, but apparently they asked him in training whether he'd ever played fullback, and he said no, but I'd like to. Well, let's hope they don't start asking Joe Marler if he fancies playing at 9 or something ridiculous, because Joe will probably put his hand up and say, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." But he's not a fullback for me. But yes, his coming on Sunday did coincide with England cutting loose a little bit, obviously against a tiring Japanese team. So yeah, let's give it another go. We've got a perfect opportunity against Chile at the weekend to try out a couple of things, because with all due respect to them, they're not going to be they're not really going to be a serious proposition in terms of winning the game. So yeah, let's have a go. Stick him there. Put Farrell in at 10 and see what happens, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like you say, the Chile game, we're probably you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. In that type of game, I mean, they've shown in the 2 matches that they've played already, Chile, that they will go hard at you for the first half, and we might not be very far ahead in that first half, but yeah, they do seem to fall away in the second half. But you mentioned Joe Marler, and that's the one other thing that we need to do for the England game. Is mentioned, I think, the try that epitomised an England performance is the most lucky, unintentional way of scoring a try in international rugby, which seemed like the only way we were actually going to do it for quite a while. The headed assist from Joe Marler was a thing of beauty, was it not, Barry?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen all sorts of photoshopped mock-ups on social media ever since then of him in various football kits. But yeah, it was great. And whatever you think about Joe in the club game, and sometimes he can be can I say a bit of an arse? Yeah, I can say that. He was exceptionally entertaining on this occasion, and especially with his interview afterwards, where he claimed that they've been practicing this in training, because it was patently obvious that they didn't. I've got to say though, for as clinical as that nodded pass was, well done to Courtney Laws, because he saw it straight away, didn't he? And came from a long way back, picked up that ball, realised everyone else had stopped, picked up the ball and went straight in under the posts.
A play to the whistle is a mantra that you're supposed to learn as a 5-year-old playing any sport, isn't it? So yeah, it's good that we did take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, every other result in the World Cup seems to have either gone to the favourites or gone to form, and I say that because the Australia-Fiji game was marked as a shock win for Fiji, but actually I'm not entirely sure, given the state of Australian rugby at the moment and how well Fiji played against Wales and should have beaten Wales, that was actually very much of a shock to see Fiji turn over Eddie Jones's Australia.
No, it wasn't really. I mean, you can historically, yes, it would be a shock for Fiji to turn over the Aussies, but yeah, Australian rugby seems to be in an even worse position than perhaps we are at the moment. I don't really know why. I don't know I don't know enough about their club game to look at whether they haven't got the players anymore or what's going on over there. But yeah, they do seem to be in a bit of a mess, and Eddie Jones has consistently gone into places and had a pretty big and immediate impact for a limited amount of time, but he seems to have lost that knack with the Aussies, and I think it could be a short-lived reign for Eddie, and the second time in Oz.
Yeah, I hate to say I'm surprised, to be honest, but there we go. But I mean, it's a really interesting group in the World Cup. That we've got Australia and Fiji there, and Wales, and Georgia probably still have something to say. in that group. And do you know what? Portugal didn't look that bad either. So I think that's probably the most interesting group of the World Cup. And there's another 3 rounds of the group stage to go, and we'll definitely review the finer talking points of that. But there's one more. Samoa against Chile in our group. A lot of the highlight reel had Theo McFarland in it, which isn't really much of a surprise, is it?
That guy could be his own highlight reel just for turning up and running around on a rugby pitch. I mean, he's such an unusual player to watch, and he's got so many different skills that we don't necessarily associate with other players. That he's Mr. Box Office. That's what we should call him.
Absolutely, yeah. Not looking forward to him coming up against England, to be fair, in a few weeks' time. So yeah, we'll have to see about that. But I think now we'll let the World Cup slide for a bit. We'll hand over to Jez, who's sat down and had an interview with our kicking coach at Saracens, Dan Vickers, talking about his time at the club and the Prem Cup so far. So we'll be back after that.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Fezcast, our first club men's senior team interview of season 4, and I'd like to welcome kicking coach and, well, the man who you often see on the television being interviewed during the game, Dan Vickers. How you doing, Dan?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm going okay. It's good to be playing games. Would be good to winning more games, but at the moment, yeah, we're going through seeing how our younger guys are going, and it's been exciting. Yeah, watching them develop.
Well, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first of all, I mean, let's talk about the good things. Let's go back to the end of last season and just say, we came back, we won the Premiership title. It's absolutely fantastic for everybody, that journey that we've been on. I mean, how good was it at the end of last season for you guys?
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, it's something I'll never forget. Probably never ever forget the whole season, but then you can even just focus on that day, that game, which there was a huge amount of relief as well as excitement, and I think we deserved it. The better team all year, and but really proud of it, proud of that whole club, and particularly if you've been around for long enough to have gone through all the different waves that we've been through, and then to come out like that. I think it was incredible. But again, now we're free. We can go off and obviously do it again. But having achieved that first one back was sensational.
Well, I suppose, that's my next question, Dan. I mean, we won the title, you lifted the cup. I mean, how soon was it before you were back and saying, right, that's gone, done? When did planning for the next season start? I mean, obviously, we'd had players announced that were signing, like the likes of Tom Willis, and then new players coming in as well. I mean, it's been a busy old summer, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually, because even before the season's finished, you're already thinking occasionally about what's to come. Like Tom Willis, as you say, Tom Parton, West, Ollie Hoskins, like they weren't a part of it. So you've got this incredible party, elation, and then before you know it, you're back together, and you've got these new people that haven't experienced that, but are part of your team, part of your journey again. So. And because the training ground here is an incredible place to be day in, day out, a learning club, but it's enjoyable. It's nice to get back into the swing of it, because it's not just about that final trophy lifting day. There's so many good things, memories, things that happen in the season. That's what can, makes it sustainable to come back and go again.
Well, you've been doing it for quite a number of seasons as well, haven't you, Dan? I mean, when did you join the club? Was it sort of mid 2000s, wasn't it?
I joined the club. Yeah, I actually joined the club so 06. So, I was actually, we sort of, after finishing rugby myself back in Australia, I played at the Waratahs back in New South Wales. I became a physio, and then my first jobs here at Saracens was a physio. I was a physio, but had a rugby brain, and got the chance to go into coaching, and I took it, and it took off. So first 3-4 years was a physio, and then now I'm just bitten by the whole coaching side of it, and it just continues to stimulate me to work with, I think, the best club ever.
Well, absolutely. It's why we do what we do with the Fezcast as well, Dan. I mean, it's wonderful to be part of that. I mean, we do get ourselves involved in some spats outside with the rest of the rugby world, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Oh, sure.
We sometimes feel like we're on the vanguard of of that. But I mean, with the good, obviously, does come the less good, shall we say? I don't want to say bad. I mean, as I say, we're on the vanguard of social media and whatever, and you'll see lots of, over the last couple of weeks, lots of diverse opinions. It's been the worst thing they've seen in years. When I go back to the days at Vicarage Rose and even before that, and I can promise you, it wasn't great back then. Or, people have sat there saying, oh, it's just a Premiership Cup or whatever. We've entered that Premiership Cup. We want to win it, don't we? But obviously there's something a bit more bigger picture around it.
Yeah, there is, and you have to continue to invest for the future, and that usually comes back to giving young guys game time. And if our best squad is around, it's a real challenging thing to get game time for younger players coming through. So it's a brilliant time now. Look, we don't ever really talk about we're going to go win the game anyway. That's not how we do it. But our expectations, I suppose, what we do look at, and we're expecting our young guys to come and do the best they can, fight like hell, to give everything they got for Saracens, to learn as much as they can in the week. And what happens, and we'll keep learning lessons, and it'll come, and it could come in time for some of them. But so yeah, and for a coach, from a coach's perspective, it's whilst you want to win, you want to sing the Tiki Tonga every weekend. At the moment, look, I reckon we'll sing it this weekend. My tip, I reckon we will. But expectations are that it's a good growth period too for the younger guys.
So I suppose that's is that the conversation that you're having with the guys as well? Is not putting too much pressure on them, not saying win at all costs, but are you looking at the players and seeing enough from them that it's not a case of they're not trying, which is daft thing to say, which you hear some people saying, or that they're not good enough. It's just this development they're going through.
Yeah, that's right, and it comes sort of into it's really interesting because you want them to learn how we play. So there's that, learn the Saracens way, and that's quite an expansive, interesting game, like a great game to watch, and our games develop. So they've got to learn that bit, but that comes with mistakes and errors, which is part of sport, which is fine. But we're not asking them to go into their shell. We're asking them to move on and deal with what's happened, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing. Focus on the next thing, and that sounds really easy, but it's not. It's really hard. So the effect that error can have, because you're learning, can have on you as an individual and as a team, is really difficult. And so they're the things we're reinforcing again. Is can we go after the whatever it is that's next, but not be disappointed and sad and down in the dumps and carry it into the next thing? Can we fight competitive, just fly into the next thing and not be too concerned, which Yeah, that's a bit of an insight into what we're looking at, the physical side, but the emotional side as well.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I know from my coaching experience, which was very much with junior players at a junior club, but the one thing that I learned from various coaches was that there's no such thing, in my view, as a wrong decision on a rugby field other than making no decision at all. And what I want my players to do is make a decision. You get the ball in your hands, you do something. If it doesn't go right, you learn from it, you do it differently next time. Or the rest of your team see the decision you make and make a decision off the back of that to support the decision you've made.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it's a really good point. And our players are amazing. They come out with incredible things. Like even, I think it was today, I think it might have been Lazowski. He suddenly said to the group, look, and it's around making mistakes and what's going on in the present moment and be in the moment and all that. But he said, look, everything's important. Everything's massively important. Everything's important in that moment. But then it means nothing. It's not important. So everything's important, and then everything's not important, and that's pretty much it. And that's really, really hard to wipe that from your brain, isn't it? And be that individual, that athlete, that player, how you got into this squad. It's such a competitive place to get into the environment. They all want to do well. They all want to perform well and progress and become a Maro Itoje or an Alex Good, but it's difficult. So yeah.
Well, I suppose that you mentioned there a couple of names, one of whom is away on international duty. There's a small matter of a little competition going off over in France at the moment. I mean, you as a proud Australian must be feeling a little bit disappointed at the moment after the weekend. But us as Saracen supporters, Simon Raulu and Glenn Jackson, I mean, well done to them with Fiji. But
yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of, as I say, Saracens players over there, not only with England, but Theo McFarlane, great to see him back on the field on the weekend as well with a man of the match performance. Yeah. Nick Tompkins at Wales, whatever. I mean, how difficult has it been losing all of these players for this period of time now, knowing that they're going to be, well, hopefully if you're England, away until the end of October, and you never know, it might happen. And whereas you'd normally have them, I mean, and how much planning is being put into place for when they return at whatever point, how you integrate them back into what Saracens are doing.
Yeah, I think Mark McCall does a great job in planning, and the amount of thought into that, the integration with the right mental space, because after a World Cup, it's the biggest rugby competition in the world, isn't it? And they're going to come back to what we think is probably the biggest rugby thing in the world, is our club, Saracens. But so they give them the space to reset and come back into it, so they're in a good place. That's really important. I think we've done that quite well. And they're all different. They'll all come back different times with different knocks or different experiences in the World Cup, depending on. But they all seem to be doing quite well, aren't they? And Tompkins, incredible. I think his performances for Wales have been inspiring. As you say, McFarlane. The England boys are doing better now, which has been awesome to see. Yeah, I've got an Australian cap on, but like back in the day, I wanted to be a Wallaby as a young kid, but now I've been here a long time, and the guys I know personally,
right,
most of them are English. I hope England do well, and that's a strange thing for me to be saying, because back in the day, it was all about killing the white guys,
Well, I mean, fair dues. I mean, we'll on behalf of the Fezcast, we'll co-opt you as England. That's fair enough. And I mean, obviously, if we are in the final, we'll expect to see you in a Red Roses shirt, watching it on the team with a Beardall team. But I mean, how have you been enjoying the World Cup, and have you actually been sitting down as a group and watching it, the lads or whatever? I mean, are you watching it, and also are you looking at it on a recruitment basis, looking at players who are impressing as potential signings going forward? Yeah,
definitely. Nick Kennedy, our recruitment manager or director, he's always looking at that. Rough diamonds, or they're not really rough by the time they get to the World Cup now. They're pretty good. So, but I would say that, we're even not just the World Cup, we're always looking at international rugby and trying to see what we can get for it. What are they doing? What can we be doing? Either getting ideas, floating ideas and talking about it and amongst a group. It stimulates really an interest amongst the group. So it's a really good thing for a learning club to be improving every day, improving every week. But then you've got this incredible competition going on where you can look at and be stimulated by and soak everything you can out of it, because all the other clubs are doing probably the same thing, looking at things and what they can improve. But it's interesting too, you see things that we've been doing that the other countries are taking, and so it's always it's not stealing or plagiarism. It's more, I think it's just part of the game, isn't it? Seeing how you can make it better and
absolutely. And I mean, I suppose there's been a lot of attention on some of the, for the want of a better word, the smaller nations, you likes of Portugal. And I should imagine every coach in the world looks at that try scored off the front of the line out and just saying, whoa, especially every forwards coach. I think they would have been very impressed with that. But, Chile, Uruguay, Uruguay against France the other night, excellent. So these smaller nations that are coming through, and indeed the Pacific nations now have had even more exposure to higher level international rugby. I mean, it's got to be good for the game, hasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it is good, isn't it? And those countries are doing a lot better than what they used to. There's not so much the walkover that what it used to. I think it's, well, she still gets some of those games a blowout, but they're competitive and it's been really, really enjoyable. So
excellent. Well, I mean, thank you for talking to us. I've got one last question, which is for you personally as a coach, and your role on match day, because I'm always intrigued by this. You're the guy who brings on the kicking tee. You do the work. I mean, you were a fabulous kicker in your own right. What do you say to someone like Owen Farrell when you bring on a kicking tee? And is it a case of there's a kicking tee, wins from the left, get on with it, or are you giving him more information in that period of time?
Yeah, I think with Owen it's a bit different. Owen's obviously, I learn a lot myself from Owen now. Like, he teaches me. You know what I mean? But you are there for help and assistance if they want it. I carry the tee on occasions, but it's more messages for the team. For someone like Owen, because he's attached, very, very much attached to dealing with a problem or knowing what he's doing well. But not to say I'm not there to watch and be ready with something. But I'd say, there's a lot of stuff going on in match day. There's a lot of radio messages going on, and filtering what's important for the team and what's not is my job really on a match day. What does the team need to hear? Who do we need to talk to? Do we need to give that or not? And there's a lot of emotion flying around. It's full on, from the box and what needs to go. And so that's kind of like the role of, if I'm on the pitch on the sideline with, say it's Phil Morrow, who we work together on match days, or someone else, it'll be around that. Who needs to hear what? And how do we get the team? What's tiny little things can you make a difference on getting the team back on track? Or because what sort of difference do you make? Probably not a lot, I'd say, but more on probably half time you can make a difference. But I'd say the supporting message, team messaging thing is the bigger thing. Yeah.
I mean, the one that immediately springs to mind is the Northampton Saints game last year, where we were 250 points behind or something with 20 minutes to go and came back. I mean, that must have been, was that just sheer the players just going, do you know what, we've got to do something different here? Or was that actually a message come on to say, look, guys, this is what you need to change? Or was it a bit of both?
It's quite often trying to stick to what our way is, not trying to try things different. It often is the problem that you're trying things different,
right,
too much, and you get yourself in trouble. You've got to go back to a team which is doing what our way is. That's more what that was. Not, and you could feel that game building. It was fascinating, wasn't it? And again, it wasn't about the performance. It wasn't about the outcome at all going into that match. And playing that opposition with those players, it was just a huge opportunity that we're going to shock them, and we're going to spend 80 minutes shocking them, even if it takes time to get there. So, yeah, they're the great games. They're the games you remember the most, I think, for me.
Wow.
The games when the big boys are away and you stand up for the club, you know.
Well, indeed, and again, that goes back to where we start this conversation with the youngsters coming through, that they learn that way and learn that ability, and have the confidence to do that sort of thing. But Dan, thank you ever so much for your time. As I always say when I have someone on from the club, please do pass on our best messages and wishes to the team, to the squad, to the coaches and everything, and say, we're fully behind you guys. Looking forward to you having a big performance on the weekend in a big doubleheader as well, which is going to be great for those people who can get to StoneX. Unfortunately, it's my wife's birthday this weekend, so we're away up in Chester, so I shall be keeping my ears and eyes on it in other forms. But thank you ever so much for your time, Dan, and all the best for the weekend and for the rest of the season, obviously.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jez.
Anytime.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's brilliant as well, because my Zoom didn't freeze, which is absolutely brilliant, because the last few times my Zoom keeps freezing. I have no idea why it happens. I don't do technology. So, but that's fantastic. Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah. See you.
Cheers.
Thanks, then. Thanks a lot. Ta-ra.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
I've completely gone blank, lost the plot.
Well, welcome back to episode 3 of the Fezcast.
Thank you, Barry. I'm going to keep that in, because I just stared at the screen and went totally blank for a while on what I was actually talking about. That was Jez and Dan Vickers. Thank you to Dan for joining us on the show. And we're going to pick straight up from a couple of things that Dan said in the middle of that interview, because obviously we've still got the Prem Cup on. And as we've spoken about before, the Cup isn't all about winning. We'd love it to be. There is a bigger picture with the Cup, and kind of as you expect from a coach. Dan was saying that it's a real challenge for some of our younger players, for some of our squad players, to get some game time in the way that rugby's laid out at the moment. So the Cup is the perfect place to do that. We want to win, of course, but the big picture is that it's a growth period. It's a young team out there. They're not being put under pressure to win. They're being put out there to learn the Saracens way, learn the way that Saracens play. It's kind of hard to argue with that, even as a paying punter. But yeah, there's definitely two sides to that kind of thing, isn't there, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few years now since Saracens have taken the various iterations and flavours of this particular tournament overly seriously, because everyone puts out development sides until it gets vaguely serious, and then they start putting the first team out, which kind of defeats the object. So I think it's probably fair to say that this isn't our number one target, and hasn't been for a number of years. It is interesting. We were just talking off air there about pre-season games and the fact that the championship sides seem to have played a couple of warm-up fixtures before this, so they're at least a couple of games and a couple of weeks probably ahead of our players in terms of their conditioning and their strength and their match fitness, if you like. But I mean, it's all about getting minutes. And as we said with the women's game, this is all about getting minutes in the legs, and for our younger guys getting the chance to play in front of decent crowds, half decent crowds at least, and getting some first team experience against some pretty gnarly and pretty experienced operators from the championship sides, I think.
Well, yeah, and I think we should, and probably have really, learnt our lesson from our time in the championship, losing competitively to Cornish Pirates. Yes, we then lost against Coventry in the Cup, but yeah, we know what they're all about, and we know what to expect in that. Gloucester, though, different matter, another Premiership team. And it did seem as though certainly our front row was very much second best, and the line out wasn't working particularly well. And two things really that that set a platform for the game. I've seen a lot of comments about how the backs just weren't involved at all. Maybe Manu Vunipola didn't have one of his best games, but when you haven't got that platform from the forwards and from the set piece, it is quite difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, if you can't keep hold of the ball and you keep giving away penalties and you keep losing it, then it doesn't matter how good your backs are. If you can't get the ball to them, they're not really going to be able to do very much.
No, not at all. But I've said that the front row weren't doing too well in that game. But we talk about the bigger picture. But Sam Crean playing at prop, young guy, and we saw him a fair bit at the back end of our relegation season and some of the championship as well. And then he disappeared off the map. One of those players that picks up a serious injury that the club just doesn't seem to talk about, to be honest. But he's finally back in the fold and obviously getting some crucial minutes out there this weekend as well.
Yeah, it's good to see him back. We'd still like to see Ralph back as well. We keep seeing him at games. We know he's still around the club, but that's about as much as we know at the moment.
Exactly, yeah. It's tough, isn't it? It's tough. But, yeah, I mean, for the young guys, they'll be out there, they'll make mistakes, but we know from what Dan and what other coaches and just how the club talks, they're almost encouraged to make those mistakes, and the best thing that they can do is to give it another go and see if it works. But yeah, we obviously hope that things will be a little bit better this weekend against Nottingham, which if they aren't, I think maybe some serious questions.
Yeah, I'm sure as Dan sort of hinted in his interview, they'll be looking at that game as a chance to get back into winning ways, and I'm sure they'll be looking at that and thinking, this is one that we could really do with winning, irrespective of whether we're targeting this cup or not. We don't really want to be starting the season with 3 defeats, but I've every confidence that they're learning from the action that they're getting, the younger players, and that the coaches will be working on the various bits and pieces that they need to put right for this Saturday.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Dan was remarkably confident, I think, that we were going to win against Nottingham, which suggests to me that perhaps some of our senior players that we haven't seen too much in the first couple of games might be out there straight away, which could lead to a slight mismatch, which does happen in the cup, but. We've also seen the reverse. Obviously, we were the first team to be beaten by Championship opposition, with Coventry beating us. But Ealing have beaten Northampton, and Jersey turned over Bath this weekend. And it's kind of what this cup should be about, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's good to have a genuine cup competition and to have some different sides in there. I mean, for all the talk about a 10-team Premiership, it's going to get a little bit repetitive year after year after year if you're just playing the same 9 other sides. So it's good to get some other sides. It's good to get the chance to go and visit some other places. I mean, we had some fans up in Coventry. One of the most disappointing aspects I felt about our year in the Championship was the fact that it coincided with COVID and the fact that we couldn't actually go to any games. So it's a good opportunity to do that for those that can travel and have been able to, and long may it continue. Not just for the fans, but for the players and for the Championship clubs as well. I mean, it's got to benefit them being able to play against these, dare I say it, slightly bigger sides, slightly better known names, and to get some decent crowds and some money across their bar as well.
Exactly, yeah. And, you mentioned good crowds. I think it was a record crowd for Coventry at that ground, at the Butts Park Arena, and they're in the spotlight a little bit. In fact, their fly half has this week been called up into the Tonga squad for the World Cup, I believe. So it's working for them. The Championship is a decent standard. I think there is a concern that perhaps, as much as there's a gulf between the Premiership and the Championship, but there's also a little gulf developing between the top 4-ish sides in the Championship and the rest, because some of them are professional, some of them aren't. And the 3 that I've mentioned as beating Premiership opposition, the Ealing, Jersey, Coventry, they're 3 of them. And it did show last season that they were ahead of the rest of the pack by a country mile. So I have to see what happens there.
Yeah, it's difficult in the Championship because you've got a gaggle of clubs that can't, won't, and wouldn't dare even think about getting promoted. And then you've got sort of 3 or 4 other clubs that are desperate to get promoted, and there's no promotion and relegation at the moment. And it's a whole can of worms, that set up of the Championship, and whether there's promotion and relegation, and who's in charge of it, and who's running it, and how it's funded, and how it tries to get some sort of TV deal if it can. And that's far too big a subject for us to get into in a little 5-minute slot either side of an interview. But yeah, it needs sorting out at some point, and we need to try and work out how we're going to go forward as a sport in the top 2 divisions, I think.
Yeah, like you say, we best leave that one to the experts. And there's a whole podcast dedicated to the Championship clubs who are quite rightly on top of that as a topic. But yeah, we've got Nottingham coming up, and the women's side have got a cup game, I believe, against Harlequins this weekend. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a double header, but there's I think, if I remember correctly from the information I saw earlier today, there's a 5-hour gap because the men's game kicks off at 2 and the women's game kicks off at 7. I'm guessing that's possibly to accommodate some of the England people watching the England game in the middle. But yeah, that seems like a big gap. I'm not too sure how many people are going to still be around the Stonex or come 9 o'clock when the ladies' game finishes.
I would imagine that there will be a lot of sore heads in the morning for a lot of people that are staying for the duration for that. I will be there for the men's game and a bit of the England game, but unfortunately I've got to dash off for reasons which I can't actually reveal on the podcast because someone might be listening who I would spoil a surprise for. So I'll best give that a miss. But yes, hopefully it's a better weekend for us this weekend, and we're talking about a few victories. But yeah, that'll do us for this weekend, I think. This weekend? What am I on about? It's Tuesday. What a shocking end to the show as usual. Barry, thank you very much for your time, mate.
You're welcome.
See you soon, everyone.
See ya.
This is the Fezcast.